this time every day, actually. It would be sweet if we had to start doing it here because everyone showed up every day. But today's the Immaculate Conception. Now, a lot of people hear that around Christmas time like this, and they think, oh, that must be like the angel Gabriel, like in our reading, came to Mary and said, oh, Jesus is going to be immaculately conceived in your womb. That's not what today's about. Today is about Mary being conceived without original sin, which I'll explain why. In the first reading from Genesis, we hear about Adam and Eve dropping the ball on eating the apple. I'll give you a hint. God doesn't care that much about apples. It's not like he's some kind of emotional boyfriend that's like, oh no, you didn't eat the apple, did you? No. Adam and Eve, their great sin was that of pride. Their great sin, just like all of our sin, is trying to grasp after being God. Often in our plans and in our ideas of the world, instead of just receiving from the Lord, there's areas that we want to grasp and say, Lord, you can have these parts of my life, but these ones, I'm in control of those. That's what Adam and Eve did. And they lost. They lost their union with him. It was broken. But then it says that there were some consequences to that, and that Eve, in particular, Eve, her offspring would be at battle with the snake, with the devil. And isn't that still true? We experience in the spiritual life even the battles of like, why, am I feeling or thinking these things? Often the devil, the way he likes to work is not just like do the exorcism stuff, to be like, oh, look at me, and I'm all scared. You know why? What happens when people see that? They call up the priest, and then they start praying. The devil doesn't want that. The torture of the devil is that he's so prideful, he can't help but still like tempt and manifest. That's why in his craziness, he's like, look at me. And yet it brings in the exorcist, he calls the priest, and he actually brings about the Lord's will. What happens in the story, though, is there's a 14-year-old girl who comes in that battle against Satan and crushes the head of the snake. How does she do this? Well, I'll tell you what, I don't even know, like, all growing up throughout high school, middle school, if I'd ever pick a 14-year-old girl to be, like, on my dodgeball team as the first person. And God chose little Mary to be the one to crush the head of the snake. There's a great principle in the spiritual life that we learn today. God doesn't work the way that you think. God works, well, he loves to work in your weakness. He chose Mary, who seemed like, God, why don't you choose some military person to come in, and yet he comes up to this little girl who is quite powerful. Why? Because she loved. Mary suffered the most of anyone that ever lived. You know why? Because she loved the most that anyone has ever lived, along with Jesus. Thinking about this principle of God calling us in our weakness, there's an article that I'll return to whenever I get too high on my horse or too down in the dumps. I'll give you a hint. The devil's interested in both of those. He wants you to look in the mirror and either love yourself too much or hate yourself. Either way, you're focused on yourself. I'll return to this article every now and then. It's called, Are You Weak Enough to Be a Priest? Are you weak enough to be a priest? In this article, this priest writes, when we talk about being a lawyer, you might say, oh man, that guy's really good at speaking and arguing and debating. He'd be a great lawyer. Or for you that want to be doctors, you have great dexterity and you're real smart and can memorize different things, you'd be a great doctor. So on and so forth. You might think for a priest, oh, you'd be great if you're really prayerful and you're good at listening to people and all this other stuff. It's actually not the case. In this article, the priest says the most important quality of a man to be called to be a priest is his weakness. And I would extend this not just from priesthood, but in order to be a good Christian. Can you lean into your weakness? What does that mean? Have you experienced doubt about yourself, about your future, about your past? Have you experienced insecurity and the realization that you can't do it all on your own? Have you been embarrassed or shamed because of your own mistakes? And even this is like me every day, I'm like, today I won't be stupid. I won't say something stupid, do something stupid. And by the end of the day, I'm like, I broke that promise. But St. Paul says in Romans that Christ comes most powerfully in your weakness. Why? Because you're like weak enough to actually let him in to work. You don't have to be God. That's good news, because you can't be. You can let him be God. That's why for me as a priest, I've learned all the things in seminary that I was taught were great, but the things that I'm able to offer the most are my own sufferings, the things that the Lord has put me through, that all of a sudden I'll be sitting with someone and I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, that's why you had me go through that. That's why you have me going through this, you know? I'm still an unfinished product like the rest of you. In order to be the Christian that you ought to be, lean into your weakness and find him there. What do you do in your weakness? What did Mary do? All she did was say yes. Yes, Lord. Now you've said yes to at least show up to Mass tonight on a Monday, Holy Day of Obligation. What would it be like to say yes even more deeply? Yes, Lord, I want you to be actively in my life. I surrender to you all this stuff that I carry. Some of you carry things far too long. And I tell you, tonight is the night to lay those things down. How, Father Barnabas? Just say, yes, Lord, I give you permission to act. Mary is the spouse of the Holy Spirit. She will ask if you give permission for him to come. Why? What will happen then? In our second reading, it says, each and every one of you has a mission. What's the mission? Well, you'll discover your mission whenever it's in accord with the mission of Christ. What's the mission of Christ? The mission of Christ is union with you. Union with you. Now that sounds real theological and boring until you know the union is that he wants to fall deeply in love with you. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't eat. He doesn't have a moment where he doesn't think about you. Think about the person that if you've ever fallen in love with and you like can't stop thinking about them. And like your phone buzzes and you're like, oh, it's just my dad. Oh, you know, like Jesus feels this way towards you. He wants you to be forgiven in confession. He wants you to experience him in the sacrament so bad, not just so that you don't like go to hell and be bad. It's because he wants you to be in love with him so much. He knows that only he can satisfy your heart because he made your heart. And that everything else will make sense when you lean in to him. How do you receive him? Well, you start by receiving his mission. What's his mission? His mission is to love and be loved. You can't love as you ought to until you're loved as you need to be. And your life doesn't make any sense if you just come to church, you're like, okay, I'm a good person, and then you go out and do whatever you want. Your mission is that God's going to put people in front of you, in your classes, in your family, in your work, in your job. If you don't have the rest of your life figured out, that's okay. Just have the rest of the night figured out. Say, I'm going to eat, I'm going to study, and whoever comes to my path, I'm going to try to make their day suck less today. That's the mission of Jesus Christ, to love and be loved. One shipwreck at a time. But what's the last thing? Why are we celebrating today? The Immaculate Conception. Why do we read that reading from the Gospel if it's about the angel Gabriel coming to, say, hey, do you want Jesus? She says yes. It's because in the reading where it says, and I said it real loud so you pay attention, and the angel says to her, hail, full of grace, the Lord is with you. It's from the Hail Mary prayer, right? That in the Greek, literally if you look into a Greek Bible, the word is ke keritomene. Seminary taught me something. Ke keritomene. What's that mean? Well, for those English majors of yours or people that understand the languages, it's a past tense word. That means, Mary, you who have already been blessed. Already been blessed. With what, angel? It means whenever he showed up and then she was afraid at the greeting. She wasn't afraid at the angel that just showed up. I don't know about you, I'd be afraid of the angel. She was afraid of the greeting. Why? Because she heard, whoa, I'm already blessed. Yes. The church has always taught that Mary, when she was conceived by Joachim and Anne, the Lord gave her the grace from the cross first. She still needed to be saved, but it was in a prevenient grace way beforehand. And she was freed from original sin. She would have been like Adam and Eve. You might say, well, that sounds pretty nice because then she wouldn't have had all the temptations and sins. Adam and Eve still said no. She was so powerful because she had the freedom to say no, but she said yes. What is she teaching you? That your battle that you're in, one, it's quite powerful when you say yes. Say yes. Yes to what? Yes to him. That's what she did. And you might say, well, why do we need to talk about her at all? It's because, I'll put it the way St. Ambrose said it. St. Ambrose said that he who could make everything from nothing chose to remake everything that was ruined through Mary. Tell me how we would have gotten Jesus otherwise. We don't know. But her yes brought everyone new life. And your yes, if you want to find your mission and purpose, is to bring Jesus to everyone. How do you do that? Through your yes. Your vocations, whether you're called to be married or single. Mary shows us both. She was both virgin and mother. Whether you're man or woman, whether you're called to do great things or small things in great love, you will find on your deathbed peace because you did everything you could do to say yes, to bring Jesus to the whole world. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.